Lianne, thank you so much for jumping on the security space. Today, what we'll be discussing is a long word, so let me get this right. So, cyber anthropology and the power of yes in cybersecurity. But yes, before we get into it, are you okay to give the audience just a little bit of an introduction to yourself, if that's okay?
Yielding on the power of yes, I am. I'm very happy to do that. Hi to your listeners. I'm Lianne Potter. I'm head of security operations at ASDA, but I'm also a cyber anthropologist for my consultancy called the Anthrosecurist. Now, what is cyber anthropology? Well, anthropology is the study of human cultures, how they build, how they thrive, and also how they collapse. So, in application to cybersecurity, is how cybersecurity cultures can be built. And alongside that, I'm also about to launch my own podcast, Compromising Positions. That's due to launch on the 29th of September. And I'm getting people from all walks of life, so psychologists, behavioral scientists, economists, people from outside cybersecurity who do different tech roles to come in and talk about what drives them crazy about cybersecurity and what can we actually do to best serve them. So I'm really excited about that.
That sounds very exciting, and I'll be sure to put obviously a link to that by the time this comes out, which will be roughly about then as well. So yes, cool. So obviously, I'm just a very simple man from Lancashire. So how does sort of anthropology come into cybersecurity then? Talk to me about that then.
Well, everything we do is culturally driven, and it's really important to recognize that in cybersecurity. I know it's very easy for us to think of security being all about the controls, the technology that we use. However, at the end of the day, everything that interacts with a computer is a person. And we need to really make sure that when we're putting in these processes, systems, and tools in place, and these configurations, that it's done with that person in mind. And I think a lot of cybersecurity kind of struggles with not considering the very human element. And I know there's been a big push lately to talk about security awareness and things like that, and that's a really great start. But it really has to come down with a really deep understanding of why might someone want to circumvent the controls you've put in place? Is it because you didn't consult with anyone and therefore you've actually put blockers in that prevents people from doing their work? Is it because you're unable to kind of understand the real business needs? So cybersecurity teams know what their business need is, and that's to protect the organization. But protecting the organization isn't really what makes the organization money. And so a lot of cybersecurity teams are not mindful of the fact that the very thing that's paying their wages needs to probably come first. And you need to be much more pragmatic, a lot more collaborative, and a lot more understanding about those needs for the business. So as a cyber anthropologist, I often get asked by my clients, I want to improve security culture in my organization. Where do I start? And I say it starts with the security team. It starts with actually, before you go out into the rest of the organization and try and spread this good message of, security for good and that you're there to help, you need to look at yourselves and understand, are we actually ready to put that message forward? Because if you're not building a culture of psychological safety to start with, nobody's going to want to engage with you. So it's a little bit of a kind of PR exercise, really, is sort of looking inwards and what message do you want to convey and how do you actually really live by that?
Yeah. No, and that's really interesting, which probably leads me on to my first question then. So what's your sort of thoughts on AI then? Obviously, if everything sort of comes from a human, what's your thoughts? Do you think it's beneficial? Do you think it's beneficial in some areas? Do you think it's, actually not beneficial? What's your sort of thoughts on that? And it's probably quite a broad painted brush that, do you know what I mean? I mean in terms of this.
Yeah. So if I'm putting my pure practitioner's hat on, I'm thinking that AI is going to do a lot of good in terms of being able to spot patterns and anomalies and make us, more efficient, more able to respond to incidents quicker. On the flip side, obviously, what a lot of cybersecurity people are talking about is, can this be leveraged by the attackers? And yes, it most certainly will be. If we're going to use it, the attackers have probably been using it for a little bit longer and probably to much more better effect, to be honest. But when I think about it from an anthropological perspective, I do wonder if where does the responsibility lie in terms of protection? Because AI brings the opportunity for things like deepfakes and misinformation. And how do we prevent that from proliferating through just culture in general, let alone cybersecurity culture? And where does that responsibility lie in terms of, should we as cybersecurity practitioners be protecting our customers, our colleagues from the idea of deepfakes, the idea of misinformation? Or is that something that should be a wider consideration for bigger organizations, legislation, government? There's no been real clear answer on that. And the reason why it concerns me, the sort of AI question, is because quite a lot of things like deepfakes disproportionately affect women. Most of the deepfakes out there are, of a sexual nature, that can be more reputationally damaging, and it's usually a woman that's sort of impacted by that. Someone's put a public figure's face on, on the porn star's body, for example. And what does that do to a society when we don't really know how to trust our eyes? Because it is getting better and better. So from an anthropological perspective, the AI question is really fascinating to me. But I can also see it from the plus side that culturally it might actually yield some really interesting results, particularly for isolated cultures. And who's to say that a relationship built with an AI persona isn't just as rewarding as a relationship built with an individual, if that person still gets the cultural satisfaction that would be done with any kind of society? So it's a really deep and intense question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's something I'm very interested in. I'm hoping actually to kind of branch out into that space with my anthropology soon.
Yeah, no, it is really interesting, and yeah, like you were saying about the deep fakes. Did you see that one with Martin Lewis? Like,
Yeah.
because obviously his audience is massive, and even he was like, "God, that's scary." Because like even he had to be like, "Did I say that?" And because
Mm.
it was like you say, very advanced, and like only subtle cues were like, "Yeah, that's not him. That's not him that said it."
Well,
I think
yeah, well,
he's only just
my
turned
other
to it, hasn't
yeah, well, my other half sent me a picture of me, and I was like, I don't remember being there. And I was looking at it for ages. And I was like, I don't remember when this was taken. I don't remember wearing that outfit. It
he?
wasn't
Yeah,
anything weird or anything. It was just
yeah,
like kind of normal. And he said, no, I've put that through Midjourney. I took one of your normal photos, put it through Midjourney, and said, put you in this setting. And and it was a picture of me, and I could not at first recognize that it wasn't
yeah,
me.
yeah. It's
So if you don't
scary,
even know
isn't it?
yourself, that's just absolute madness.
Oh yeah. Oh no, definitely. Cool. So obviously, just to change course ever so slightly, then. So obviously, this pod is meant to be sort of like twin-sided, and I want to kind of bring in a little bit of your personal life as well in terms of the hobbies. And I know that obviously you're into improv and the power of saying yes, because there is a common theme between the Screwed Space podcast. I like to bring in sort of people's hobbies because it tends to relate to them as a cybersecurity practitioner as well. So obviously, we were kind of discussing off camera a little bit about the power of yes. So talk to me a little bit about what you mean about the power of yes.
Yeah, so when I'm not working or talking about cybersecurity, I am on the stage. I'm part of an improv troupe called Row of It. It's the geekiest improv troupe in Leeds because we're all board game nerds as well. We actually do use a D20, a massive D20, to make our decisions on our scenes and things like that. And I fell in love with improv because one, it gives you an opportunity to play. It teaches you how to think on your feet, which is a massive skill in cybersecurity. You really do need to be able to do that. But the main thing I take away from it, and it kind of really clicked for me, was the power of yes and, which is one of the main principles of improv. Now, when a scene starts up, you can go two ways. And one way you could go is someone comes into the scene and says, I can't believe you ate that cake. Now, if your scene partner turns around and says, No, I didn't,
It
that
kills it dead.
scene cuts it completely dead. And your job in improv is to make the other person look good.
Mm.
And when you've got your other scene partner just kind of going like that, that's not in the ethos of improv.
Yes.
However, another way to obviously approach the scene is to go, I can't believe you ate that cake, and then you go, yes, and I can't believe you did that, and then build upon that scene and
Yeah.
kind of have a
Create a story.
collaboration. And why I think that's really important, lessons to kind of apply to cybersecurity. Historically, we've had to say no to a lot of things in cybersecurity, and that's no one's fault. We're often the most under-resourced, underloved, isolated area of the business. It's only recently that we've become not just an IT function in quite a lot of places. It still exists some places, but most for the most part, our own sort of on our own back. And we've had to say no to a lot of things to be self-preservationists. The tooling hasn't even been there until quite recently, the last, 5-10 years.
Mm.
We're not able to keep our eyes on everything. So we've had to say no because that's easier than taking on all this risk that we can't manage. So what I look at nowadays, though, is the tooling is better. We do have a lot more people, and we are making people more accountable in their own areas, utilizing them as experts. So I think of, for example, software engineers, they're going to know way better than your average security practitioner what it takes to make their code secure.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't really expect and people do, can't really expect a cybersecurity practitioner to know everything there is to know about software engineering in every single language. The CI/CD pipeline, the cloud platform that it's on, or the networks that it's on, how the data is transferred, all that good stuff that goes into making a product or service. You can't expect one cybersecurity person to be an expert in all that when, on the flip side, you would only expect that software engineer to be an expert in JavaScript, for example.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but I think we are beginning to leverage people as allies in that thing. But when it comes to having security discussions with the business, there is still that perception that we're going to say no, so people don't engage with us. And so it's important for us to begin to be seen as fellow collaborators, but also that we're willing to make compromises, we're willing to be pragmatic about the issues at place, and therefore saying yes and a bit more. Now, yes and doesn't mean say yes, let's open up all the firewall ports. Yes, let's ship really insecure code. That's not what it means. It means yes, and I recognize you want to deliver this as part of the business. Let's think about ways we can do this securely.
Yeah.
And it's just a slight subtle mind shift. And again, going back to what I was saying earlier about, in improv, your job is to make the other person look good.
Yeah.
That's what I really like about it. It's not about ego. It's just about trying to make the audience laugh and making the other person look good. The same principles apply surely for cybersecurity. It's our job to make the business look good. And so we need to sort of get over some of the egos of, sometimes we do come across as, oh, we're the smartest people in the room. Only our opinion matters. Only our concerns, being security, matter. And that's really not the case. It should be our job to enable the business to take risk. And I think it's because sometimes security practitioners forget that risk isn't a dirty word. It's actually a really powerful way and force of innovation. Risk takers, whether that be in business or individuals, they do so based on the knowledge that they have up front, and also with the idea that if they take a risk, it will allow them to push an agenda forward, usually innovation. So risk enables businesses to be more innovative, and we should be seen as the people who, mostly talk about risk in our day-to-day lives. Surely we should also be seen as the people who talk about innovation most. And we just don't do that. And it's a shame. And I think we really could be a really innovative capability in the business. And it would probably give us more kudos and get us more seats at that table.
Yeah, no, some terrific points made there, and just wanted to go back and like further emphasize what you said there about like security and how it's like we shouldn't be. It is in a weird way a sector where it's like if we're in the headlines, it's probably not a good thing. It's like in football, for example, if your goalkeeper's down on a match, like what does that mean? Does it mean like are you actually doing well, or are you just kind of like hanging on by the skin of your teeth? And it's like you say with security, we shouldn't really be going for the headlines. We should be kind of doing our job so that everyone else can kind of flourish. It is kind of like a weird sector like that. And there's also another point you made, obviously, and it is around sort of like it was the language that you used, and it's about like sort of like, yeah, we don't have to say yes, we'll do everything here, but it is like it's just the subtle telltale signs that can, again, linking it back into the cyber anthropology, is a sense of like how we can create a better culture in security just by saying like it's minor tweaks, isn't it? And it's just like yes, I understand what you're saying, and like it's like I've done podcasts where we're promoting security awareness, and if someone's like going, oh, I'm really sorry, I clicked on a phishing link, for example, like I'm real worried, like I'm gonna be in trouble, I'm gonna lose my job. It's
Mhm.
like, well, like I'm gonna contradict myself, but no, don't worry about it. But like, let me help you out for future. Like, I'm not gonna punish you or anything like that. But this is how we can do it moving forward. So is that sort of what you're saying then? Is it like just to bring sort of, the power of yes and cyber anthropology together? Then, do you think that that is a way of increasing a security culture then by sort of what you're saying there?
Yeah, absolutely. Because one of the main complaints that you'll hear from a security team is nobody wants to talk to us. Nobody wants to engage with us. And, you know, when I think about security, our message has been consistent for, so some people say we, as a function, we've been kind of going for like 30 years, some say 20, but either way, in the grand scheme of things, cybersecurity has not been very long in compared to
Mhm.
other tech disciplines. Um, the message has been consistent. So, like have strong passwords, don't click on that to 2FA and things like that. Um, and keep things secret that you want to keep secret, keep things under lock and virtual key where you want to keep secret. If that's been our consistent message since our inception, why isn't it working if we've been saying the same thing? And I really feel like we need to readdress that. There's something in the messaging that we're giving out, despite its consistency, and everyone knows that they need to have strong passwords. Everyone knows that they need to have unique passwords for every site, but people don't do it. And is there something we could be doing to innovate in the space? Are we really thinking about what is it like to go into a process? For example, um, if I was thinking about this from a engineering perspective and I was designing an application, the end goal of me accessing an application isn't me logging in. That's not my primary objective. However, from a security perspective, that is my primary concern. And so what happens is that we put really clunky controls in place into this process that the actual end user doesn't really care about. They just want to either buy something, access a service. The logging in part just enables them to do that. It's really secondary. But the way we approach that problem is that we overload it with complexity. And we never, as far as I'm aware, very rarely do organizations, security teams, go out and speak to the user research team, the user experience team, and say, do you ever ask questions about the login process? Do you ever think about, what is that person coming into in this journey? For example, if you work in an insurance company, if someone's, pipes have just burst and they want to get hold of someone, and for whatever reason they can't do the telephone, they've been told to do it online. If they're in high stress and they're trying to log in, messing around putting their passwords in, and they're stressed because you've told them to have a really long, complex password, which I know is the advice, but think about it, if that person's under stress, swimming around in water, what is that user journey like? Because that user journey will impact the rest of the user journey. So the security journey is often one of the first points of the user journey, never considered by user researchers team.
Mm.
And this is not a criticism of user researchers team. It's because we as security people have not even thought to communicate with them and say, what does this process look like from that perspective? And that clouds the whole journey.
Yeah. And
And I just think it's just something we could really do better.
yeah, and that again, I just want to link it back to sort of what I asked about sort of AI earlier, and that's
Mhm.
something like, and it's what again you highlighted in the sense of we're missing out on being an innovative sector, in the sense of like we're kind of losing our sense of like we can ask questions. We've got the power of it. We've got the power of previous experience and context and emotional intelligence that we're just missing out on, and because we kind of are we becoming lazy and just like being like, like, yeah, it's not part of it. I don't need to bring in my actual working brain to be like and use that. It's kind of shifting the balance towards AI,
Mm.
isn't it? Do you think that too?
I think it could be really useful to leverage that to understand contextual logging in
Mm.
in a sense to because I know that when we do security monitoring, for example, there's obviously behavioral monitoring.
Okay.
So if someone typically signs in into the UK and then all of a sudden 30 minutes later they sign in from Berlin, for example,
Yeah.
that's unusual. So that kind of understanding of sort of context, you know, we should be maybe considering using things like AI that when people are logging in, how many sort of password failures do they have? And considering actually now my typical security hat would go, oh, that's a hacker trying to break in after loads of failures. But if I
Yeah.
put my user researcher hat in, is that because we've put too much complexity behind that? Are we
Yeah.
making it more difficult for people to remember? And so therefore we're spoiling that user journey. I think there's two sides to it. And we can utilize things like AI to understand that,
Yeah.
to understand what the contextual if that person is logging in where they normally log in all the time, they have a genuine account and things like that. If there's anything kind of metrics we can sort of verify that this person is a genuine login, but actually the password error piece is down to stress, down to anxiety, or down to our controls being too restrictive, maybe that's something we can consider building upon. So I really think with AI and cybersecurity, in terms of making our jobs easier, I just can't wait, to be honest. There
Yeah.
will come with challenges, obviously, with the hackers also doing the same thing, but
Oh, absolutely. And so whilst it can help, obviously, your workplace, bringing it back to your hobby, then have you ever tried actually in your own time do like a once upon a time with an AI, and have you had any sort of success doing that? Because I bet like ChatGPT, I bet it's good because obviously like it can relate words, but I bet it can't be funny, or am I wrong?
it can be fun in an ironic way.
Yeah. Yeah.
ChatGPT, I've used ChatGPT to kind of help me with springboard ideas, and things like that. And some of the things are just absolutely wacky.
Yeah.
Um, as with anything, sometimes the most wackiest improver doesn't actually help. So you can definitely tell when someone's trying to be funny. Sometimes
Yeah.
ChatGPT feels like that. Um, but no, I've not done AI sort of kind of back and forth improv. It might be quite a fun thing to try out actually,
Yeah.
and see what comes out of there. But in a way, when we think about AI, it's trained on people. So
Mm.
when I come into a scene, the very nature of improv is you do not know what's coming. Someone will say, for example, what is the relationship between these two people on stage? And they'll
Mm.
say, brother and sister, husband and wife, whatever. And where is the location? So they'll say something like a supermarket, or they'll say, a school.
Yeah.
And so you build that relationship, and you literally, the person hosting it will go.
Yeah.
And in a way, AI kind of feels like that because you type in a prompt and you don't really know what you're going to get back.
Yeah.
And I've also really enjoyed asking lots of philosophical questions about itself and about anthropology and about the nature of creativity.
Yeah.
It assures us, by the way, that it's never going to replace great artists and things like that. So that's good. Um,
Nice that you're reassuring us
it's,
like
it's,
that,
ni- it's
isn't
nice. It's nice to know. But like with improv, that's where it's kind of like, and you don't know what's coming next. It's not pre-agreed. So, you could start off with a very kind of mundane scene in a school, for example, student and teacher relationship, and then all of a sudden it'll just intensify because of yes and it'll just
it?
intensify into sheer chaos and madness, hopefully for comedic effect. Um, so it's really kind of being accepting and playing against people like that, knowing not what to expect is actually quite liberating.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a really nice skill to kind of hone and develop.
Definitely. Cool, Leanne. So as we enter sort of the last 5 minutes, what I've recently been sort of finishing the pods with is just so that we'll go into a little bit of your your journey up to now,
Mm,
and it's just so that someone that's listening, they might just take a bit of like, oh, I know, like oh, it's a chance encounter in which you got an opportunity, or it was from attending an event or doing a certain certificate. So if you can give us just like a quick sort of synopsis of your journey, and any sort of, like I say, chance encounters or
yeah.
job applications that you think you shouldn't have applied for but you got it anyway, just to how you've climbed the ladder.
Yeah, certainly. So I wasn't always in tech. I was a wedding photographer for 10 years prior to getting into tech. I absolutely love that job. By the way, I thought it was fantastic. It was incredibly stressful, but it was, from an anthropologist's point of view, it was great to be part of such significant rituals all the time.
Yeah, my sister's a wedding photographer and a baby photographer, half and
Yeah.
half. So I know what you mean. She's very sort of creative and
Mhm.
loves being part of people's big days. I know what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's up for a party. It's a nice place to work. Everyone's up for a party.
Yes.
Everyone's dressed nice. It's really good. I love that job. But it was getting to be a bit trialing on the knees because it's a very physical job. You're carrying a load of kit, and
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know about your sister, but for like speeches and stuff, I'd be kind of on my knees, so I won't be in the way and stuff. And yeah, it was just getting me physically.
yeah, yeah.
So I was like, all right, so what do I want to do? So I started doing my studies in anthropology anyways while I was a wedding photographer. But then I started focusing on digital anthropology, mostly because I'm an absolute nerd, and I am part of the early 2000s MSN culture and things like that. So most of my kind of cultural experiences growing up were based on online chats, anyways. So I became fascinated by that. So my specialism was digital anthropology, and I started looking at what's known as the digital divide. Now, the digital divide posits, and this was years ago, and I'll go into why that's significant, posits that if you are socially excluded from online services, so that could be, housing benefit, that could be, workplace benefits, sort of like, job seekers and things like that, education and health and things like that. If you're socially disadvantaged in that way, it will have a massive impact. And at the time, COVID hadn't happened or anything like that, but we definitely saw that in COVID when we saw families who only had one computer between them. They had to do all the school teaching and all the, work-life balance and things like that. The digital divide is very much still real. It's nothing really to do with the fact that a lot of people have smartphones. It's to do with an understanding that sometimes when we put digital services online, it can be really exclusionary. So I became really fascinated with that, and that became my specialism. And then I managed to actually get a job doing that. So I worked for a charity, and we were given £5 million, told to solve destitution in Leeds, which is the city I'm in. I had no idea what was going to materialize from that, but straight away we were seeing people coming into our services. They'd not eaten for days. They're about to lose their house. Hadn't worked in ages. Just absolute dire straits. And a lot of that was because recently and this was back then, the government had moved all its in-person services online. So people who would normally go into the job centre, for example, to sign on, were pointed to a bank of computers and say it's all online now and given no training. I believe that's changed now, but at the time, this is when it first came in, given no training. And so people just walked away because they didn't have any experience of using a computer, or they were told go to a library and learn how to use a computer and then sign on. But if you are have maybe mental health issues, addiction issues, a place like a library is still seen as quite a lofty, uninviting place. And it can put a lot of people off. So these people coming into our services, and most of our time we were just spent doing online forms for people because, for the best will in the world, it's important to move with the times and have a digital presence. But at the time, they had not considered that the main people, the most vulnerable people in society, were unable to access these services. And
Mm,
so charities like myself were filling those gaps.
mm.
So I became really fascinated with that and wanted to know how I could do tech for good. So I decided to teach myself how to code. And so I spent every evening and weekend I could teaching myself how to code, just using free online resources. So free Code Camp, Code Academy, YouTube videos, books, things like that. Never done anything like that before. And I was 30 at the time. So, I
Yeah.
wasn't so a little older. And within 5 months, I managed to be job ready because I applied for a job at NHS Digital
Yeah.
for the graduate training scheme. Now, I was the oldest graduate there, and had a mortgage and everything like that. But luckily for me, the graduate scheme was an open, you could have graduated whenever and
Yeah,
joined the
yeah.
scheme. And I really think it wasn't just because I managed to pass the technical test, of course, but I think it was the anthropology side of it, and sort of my sell to them was, if you bring me in, not only will I be able to code for you, so I came in as a software developer, I will be able to really point out and say, actually, are we considering the user in mind as we're building this stuff? And it was a fantastic opportunity. And then they did take me up on that. I did lots of talks in NHS Digital about anthropology and about understanding the cultural aspects that would frame an individual when they're accessing our services. Because with the NHS, you've got to be really mindful that the NHS is for everyone. And building a product that is for everyone is very, very, very tough. It's not like
unlikely you're going to please everyone, isn't it? It's unlikely.
Yeah. There's and alongside that, there's all the accessibility requirements that are needed and things like that. So it's really tough. It was such a great opportunity. But what I noticed when I first joined was there was a team, and it was literally on another floor, locked up by lock and key. And the only time I ever had any interaction with them was when I had to remediate pen tests, and that was the security team. And nobody wanted to engage with the security team, and nobody wanted to speak to them. And even if you wanted to, they were on a different floor, and you had to have security clearance to be anywhere near them. So they were literally ivory towered physically away from some people. So I, being an anthropologist, was absolutely fascinated by the idea that, because NHS Digital had this really great collaboration, innovative culture, I was really fascinated that there was this one area of the business that was literally sectioned off and had its own microculture and everything like that. So I was desperate to join. So I bugged them, and I really mean I bugged them for a year to let me in to do a bit of my graduate scheme in their function. And after a year of really being persistent, I, paid for courses out my own, cybersecurity courses out my own money, went to conferences and things like that, and sort of proved myself that I was, really interested in this. They let me in as a SOC analyst. So my first cybersecurity job was SOC analyst for NHS Digital, and I helped them implement their SIEM solution across 1.5 million endpoints, which was a really exciting piece of work. So me and my then boss at the time were just trying to onboard this huge SIEM project for NHS Digital. It was really exciting, and that's my start into security. So bugging people, absolutely bugging people.
Yeah, no, but do you know what? Like, when it does seem to be the relatively same stuff that comes up. Obviously, it digresses slightly, but it's persistence. It's the fact that you took your own time to watch YouTube videos, pay out your own pocket for some courses, and like you say, it is just getting. I've said it before, and people put it ever so more eloquently than me, but it is just getting in the thick of it. And if you want it, it's like go and ask them. Like go and ask what do you do? Because if you just applying for jobs that are on the job board, it's very reactive, and you're probably only seeing about 20% of the market. Like, go and chat to people, because, like you say, I've been speaking to people now in cyber for just coming up to 5 years now, and it's not a scary industry. Like, there's this elusive kind of thing, like, oh, I see, so we're a head of cyber and infosec manager. Oh, like they're going to be these big scary people. They're not. Like, they're happy to take any questions, and it is a very inclusive industry. So, and that was a really good story, Leanne. So and that is all we've got time for today. So if anybody's got any questions for Leanne, I will be sure to obviously put her details below so that you can ask her anything. And yeah, make sure that I'll also put a link to Leanne's podcast as well, Compromising Positions, that's coming up, like I say, at the end of this month. So make sure you tune in for that. But yeah, once again, Leanne, thanks so much for coming on the Security Space.
Thank you so much.